We're live. So again, this is John Wilson Potchkadoop. This actually should be the first one. I've been doing a couple of these. We're doing kind of a 5-year celebration, little short video clips with the people who were at that original Devops days, and in my opinion, have been instrumental in just spreading the word over the last 5 years. And so, of course, the Godfather of DevOps. So hey, Patrick, how's it going?
Ah, now you're calling my name. That's fine.
You're never gonna forgive me for that, Godfather.
No, no.
You kind of got close to getting even with me on the
Yeah.
Deming thing, but so anyway, I mean, like we talked about this and interviewing people, and you know, so my story was, I've told this 100 times that I was listening to Andrew Schaefer and Cote talk about Agile infrastructure on one of Michael's podcasts, is Agile Executive, whatever, and and then I went ahead and like I was like, oh my God, I felt like, oh my God, that sounds exactly like something I really want to do, and I called Andrew, and Andrew said, well, there's some guy over in Belgium that's doing a bunch of stuff. You should, and I kind of heat seeked you down and found you and sent you some emails, and you said, hey, I'm running this event if you want to come. And I'm like, oh boy, that's going to be tough. And you said, so well, I'll tell you what, if I was at Canonical at the time, and you said, if Canonical can pay your way to come from America, then we can give Canonical a sponsorship. And I went to my boss at the time, and I told him, he's like, Simon Wardley, and then he's like, what's this DevOps thing? I'm like, I have no freaking idea. I just know it's someplace I have to be. So, and I'm like, I just knew I had to be there. It was kind of like fate, really. But so, like, tell us the story. Like, how'd you come up with it? Or give us some kind of inside baseball too that we haven't heard before.
Well, what you haven't heard before is that I kind of was scared to put the conference on. Really, as I haven't really put on a conference for people that on a subject they don't know, on things that partly I didn't know anything about it. Like, for example, it was Chris Buttard who pointed out the whole config management thing from Puppet Labs to me. Like, I hadn't even played with it. It's like, okay, looks kind of cool. Put it on. The same was for other speakers. Matt Reckenberg was doing cloud stuff. I didn't do cloud stuff before. I was still in the enterprise waiting for my server on that. I think I could relate to mostly the Agile people coming in a way that, I was working closely with Agile development and trying to expand the field on there. So that was kind of more of my comfort zone. Also that I went to the Agile Toronto conference where I met Andrew before. We're already talking about Agile system administration. But the whole config management thing was kind of as an afterthought for me to put it into the conference. It wasn't a testing because everything that Lindsay described on BDD and using that for monitoring, that's kind of something I expected that was cool. I think there's more to be told. My feeling maybe right after the conference, where I didn't actually realize it was any success. People were drinking, having fun, but that was kind of no different from whatever you organized if there's beer and people involved. I think it wasn't until the traction it got, like the month later on Twitter, where it's like, where is this going? Like, you took it across the ocean. It's like, wow, somebody cared about this conference, and they're still raving about it. And you might say, the conference being instrumental, but like people like Stephen Nelson Smith with this blog post, I often wonder if it didn't wrote that blog post, whether that would have happened as well. Like, I think he put the stake in the ground, or at least he wrote the stake in the ground that kind of started at the conference. And so I was constantly amazed by people kept on raving about how great that conference was and kind of the need uh, I think I didn't expect it, like even before or right after organizing it, that it would have that effect. So.
Well, to me, it was, I mean, literally, it was, I mean, I mean, I'd started playing around with open source, but I really had been doing 10 or 15 years of miserable stuff in IT. I mean, doing large enterprise Tivoli stuff was just, it paid really well, and I always joke, it paid for one of my houses, it got me a boat. I mean, but I always felt like I had to take a shower because I felt I was stuck. Like, this is the kind of work you have to do to make a living, even though you're really kind of cheating the customers because they're just not getting the value. And open source kind of opened that a little to me, but I really do. I mean, to me, that event was just like it just gave me, at least a 5 year run of excitement. Hopefully 10 or 15. And I wonder, like, it sounds like to you were kind of so busy organizing it because everybody else, I think, got that same euphoria of like, oh my God, this is just something special here. And maybe you were just so busy worrying about the
Yeah,
event and all.
you're trying to make people happy. You worry about the food, the
Yeah.
sandwiches. I think after the first video that I put up, like the opener, I was kind of like, huh, I was somewhere in the corridor, maybe listening 5 words and thinking like, oh, it's going to be weird. I'll see it anyway. I think I may have gone to one or two open spaces, but not the big thing. But you're running around, see if everybody's happy. So
Yeah.
kind
No, but
of
you talk about Planet Seeds because I mean everybody kind of went away from there, but and I'm sure for me you pulled me aside like on the second day and said, I don't know if you remember, you said, John, what would you think of doing something like this in the U.S.? And it stuck in the back of my head, but I didn't. I kept thinking, how do I do this? I don't. I'm still trying to figure out what it was. And I joke it was a visit to London where I was talking to Chris Reed and Paul Nazareth and Stephen. We all went to. I happened to be working up there for a week, and we went to a lunch or dinner together. And Paul said, "Well, why don't you do it in the tail end of Velocity?" I'm like, "Wow, that's a great idea." And I went and asked Jesse Robbins, who was the chair of Velocity, whether he thought they'd get mad if we did it on the tail end. But it was you who kind of, like, the whole thing about, like, you kind of grabbed me by the shirt and said, hey, John, And so, I mean, again, I think you're,
honestly, I cannot remember any.
no, you definitely did. I mean, I don't think I would have had I wouldn't have had the courage at that point to do something as bold.
Maybe what inclined me to do that, because, like, for example, I met Chris Bartard at a cloud camp. And I knew these were already organized around the world.
Right.
So maybe that's kind of why I kind of said, running these things. I don't know. Actually, it feels really on me to have asked you that. So.
Yeah. Unless I was daydreaming it, but it was. Put it this way: it was either me doing some post-hypnotic, understanding that gave me the courage, because I felt so out of my element with you guys. I mean, I literally was getting thrown into a world. I told Lindsay, with his stuff that he was doing, Flapjack, and listening to Chris Reed talk about deployment pipelines in 2009. I mean, my head was exploding, and I was like, yeah, the last thing I want to do is even sound like I know anything about anything, and how dare I run a conference, But
it's the same for me. Like I said, I didn't do cloud. I was never used Puppet before. I think it actually took me about a year and a half to have done everything that we've talked about.
That's funny. Yeah, but you came on.
So I touched all technology after that. So.
Yeah, you came on like a madman, though. You pretty much own those technologies once you started getting in. So what about what? I mean, this is the unfair question. Not as bad as the last question. It's the worst, most unfair. So what about the last 5 years? I mean, what do you think? What's going on here?
Well, it's one of the things I remarked recently is that it's, I think, one of the few movements that actually has people and roles in the name. So it's not about the technology. So it's kind of an interesting observation. That seems to have struck a chord for a lot of people, like the improvement they got from work, not being a hassle, and that stuff. So that's been really interesting, like people sending me thank you emails, like you changed my life.
Wow.
That's really well. it's really gratifying if people start doing that. It's always also has been an interesting ride to look at it as something that just started, and when the big roles of marketing and the big companies roll in, like there's there's definitely like a shift happening in this space. Like people or companies buying other companies to just get in the space. Some companies get it, some don't. Marketing takes over, puts the label on everything, and then at the same time, people are running away because they're shying away from that maybe I would say non-polluted, but it's not fair to marketing people. But I would say it's this kind of niche where you can work in, you're happy with, and maybe it's not that you want everybody to know because obviously there's always like people you're interested in and people you're not interested in. The same has happened on the Twitter. In the beginning, if you saw the hashtag, it was kind of like, okay, that's going to be interesting, whatever is there. Now, I must say I'm kind of almost mute the Twitter handle, and I just follow people back.
Yeah, no,
The
I
same
totally.
way of doing things.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, just the way things work, right? I mean, early on, the I mean, the DevOps hashtag was amazing, right?
mhm.
But then, now, and again, you're right. You can't call it polluted, right? It's just the way it is. But it's job offer. It's just some company that's their version of DevOps, and good or bad, right? But
But it's part of the success, and I'm not blaming things there. Um, it just makes me wonder that we're repeating that same thing as a buzzword. Whether it's cloud, whether it's agile, whether it's has been ITIL, or whether it's been lean. There's this cycle of attention, which is kind of annoying that we keep repeating that. But then again, we keep building on those steps. And there's going to be good implementation, it's going to be bad, and well, obviously not having like any. I think it makes it easier for me. I don't have any money invested in the space, Otherwise, I might be trying to keep it at a point where I really want it to be.
right, right, yeah.
But fighting that battle is just so hard. It is what it is, and you know, whether that's
Well,
the next thing or it's going to keep on expanding, that's kind of interesting.
yeah.
It doesn't really tell you anything about the 5 years, but.
Yeah, no, no. It's I think I always tell you that the presentation you gave in Austin 2 years ago about how you saw I don't think you would have called this, but I would have said this is passion stewardess of DevOps. And it really, I mean, I kind of knew all that, but if you haven't watched it, it's the Devopsdays Austin, I guess 2013, right? And I would definitely watch Patrick's presentation there because he really, I mean, I think you'll get a sense of. We all know how important you are in this space, and I know you hate this type of stuff, but me calling you Godfather and telling you how important you are for this movement, but you are. But to watch that video to me was like just showed the things that I think people don't even realize, that some of the decisions you've made on the way this thing has worked, and I think it has a lot to do with the success. So it's pretty cool.
Well, my wife might not always have agreed with me with my choices that I took.
Yeah. We can't have it all, buddy. We can't have it all.
No, 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 no. But yeah, kind of trying to shy away from, at the moment we decentralized Devopsdays was one of them, I guess. Not trying to attract the flies to that one pile of money. I think that was a
Mm-hmm.
deliberate decision there. Seeking out other organizers and then having them to us that they have a community group to be able to start one. Yeah, there was like little choices. So as I guess it reflects, but not only me, like people like you and Damon and Chris and other people. It's the way we see things, and that has also driven the success. Being a nice guy and not being an asshole has attracted many good people as well. So.
Yeah, that's been a big part of DevOps is really the no ego, the no asshole. It's been kind of prevalent in the whole movement. So where do we go? This is the jerky question. So where does DevOps? I mean, what does DevOps look like over the next few years? Dare I say 5 years?
Yeah. So I had an interesting conversation when I was in Minneapolis. Like, where's the future gonna be? Gave a talk, kind of a philosophical view on how the world looks like and what motivations things are. And somebody said, the space is gonna be, in some circles, gonna stay existing as it is, because many people and companies have started to invest in it, and they have like a very big interest to keep it in a way that they can keep circulating money in it or interest or with the things that are already there. So I think it's happened to Agile conferences who kind of turn into from practitioners to deal-making conferences, where kind of you see less practitioners, but it's all about like let's hire or buy an Agile tool, or make a deal for consultancy or training or stuff like that. So I'm kind of guessing that will happen the next years in the space. It's probably not going to be the space where I'll be spending my time at, as it's going to be interesting, but there's going to be more of a status quo there because it's kind of intentional. Where it's expanding, in my opinion, is it's just go outside tech. I think you're doing a good job, with getting the network people in, and whether it's the DB people, database people, or security people. That's interesting, but then kind of making it link to another group. Like, I'm trying to figure out how that works with creative people and marketing people, and kind of expanding. Whether we're going to still call that DevOps, I don't know. It might turn into something new, but we'll just be building on those like building blocks that, as we've always, like, we stood on the shoulders of Lean or other stuff as well. And I think it's going to go in that direction. It's kind of an open-ended thing, but definitely the industry is going to stay for a while because there's money. And then there's just people going to wander around and figure out how feedback loops work, or how analytics work in other fields, or getting the proof. I think there's going to be another shift on a technology point, and it's probably not like world shocking, but having worked now a year with more on supporting mobile devices and different devices, I'm seeing the same problems that we are having at the back end just coming out the front end again. Whether it's the size of the screen, or the CPU of the memory, or deploying new apps, or I don't know. That's just going to increase. Like, if you look at the cycle of the App Store, that's just still insanely slow. It's just going to increase. It can't stay that way. And then with that, I think brings the whole Internet of Things at another scale, where the whole hardware needs to be tested. Like, we're relying on a lot of sensors, where the sensors used to be mainly just the hardware you buy and then install once and that's it. They're just going to be increasingly connected, and I think that's going to turn into a new challenge for people. It's kind of like the challenge we had for servers, kind of got around. We're now doing it for networking, and then kind of figuring out how it works on the mobile devices, and then figure out how you're going to update all the heat regulators in your house for the whole country. I don't know.
Or a device on your shirt, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always tell people, I think, again, one of your greatest gifts was really the name, really, because, in every one of the threads that I've had so far with the other guys is that one of the common themes is that everybody had like ideas, but it was like we finally had kind of a stake in the ground of a term, and we got to speak the same language. And people ask me, well, is DevOps, should we call it NetOps? Should we call it net/dev/sec/this/that? I'm like, it's a metaphor. It's just an icon, right? We happened to pick two that were the biggest glaring problem, which was Dev and Ops. But the word is more about the collaboration, the flow, the feedback loops, the kind of the principles that I think we've opened up. Lean opened it up, but nobody really took it for the full scale, right? Lean opened it up. Lean IT kind of opened up. Agile opened it up for developers. DevOps took it to the whole end to end. And it's a good name. I mean, and if we can just get over that that Dev and Ops doesn't really mean Dev and Ops. It means that it's a way to collaborate.
It's really hard. It's now we're getting back to the quote of Mark Reed. It's a "Ce n'est pas Devops,"
Yeah. No.
That's a good word.
Well, anyway, I think we've got our kind of time on this. Again, I think thank you for doing this, and to be a little gushy, thank you for DevOps, Patrick.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna thank you for Devops, but mostly for your company, John. And I'm not being lame because I'm a 5-year ride with you now. So.
I tell you, one of my things is I get to chat with Patrick a couple of times a month, just about everything, and it's been a pretty awesome, heck with all the technology and all the things I learned, just to get to know you and become a friend has been the biggest gift to me out of this whole gig. So.
Let's go for the Godfather 2 then.
All right, fair enough. All right, thanks.